Next, extracurricular activity fishing club trip.
Kristen, do you want to talk about this?
So this is a request from the fishing club, which was brought back this year by two teachers who volunteered to sponsor it, to go to Alto, Michigan from June 11th through June 14th. And the purpose of the trip is to obviously do some fishing in natural trout streams, which are not very common in Illinois anymore, so that's the purpose of going to Michigan, but also partnering with Trout Unlimited, which they've partnered before, to also do a stewardship program with them to collect samples from the stream to determine the overall ecology, health, and then also to restore some of the wildlife. And by doing this too, they'll give us access to their database of the different data that they've collected already from samples on the stream that Mr. Holt plans to use with the C team and his other science classes next year as well. So the cost is about $75 per student because they will be camping, and the camp does have a shelter in case there's bad weather, and because we're working with Trout Unlimited, they do not have to pay for those costs. There was a question about, so the two sponsors would like to take a minibus, and there's a question about whether or not the minibus was insured, and it is insured if they travel out of state. And there was also a question about the general wear and tear of the buses and how we account for that. And so we lease the buses, and then we also account for that just on the general IRS standard mileage rate.
Who's going to drive the bus?
One of the two sponsors.
And you don't need a special license for that?
That's what they use there.
No.
No, that's what they use.
No.
Got it.
We
They
have their
get
license
trained
on,
on
we
it.
have their
Yes.
license on file here with our insurance. You have to go through that protocol, and we go through protocol on the emergency door. Anybody that wants to be on the list for driving those.
I think you missed the point of the question. It was kind of like when we rent the space, Gary's asked it many times. If we let the group take the bus to Michigan, how are they going to cover the cost of the bus? Or should they cover the cost of the bus?
Yeah, I mean.
If it's leased.
Well, I think what Tim's saying is it?
If all they do is pay for the gas, that certainly doesn't cover the cost of driving the bus there back.
But if
Right.
the bus sits there that same time period and no one uses it, we're still paying for that.
Well, yeah, but like every rental business in the world, you pay for it when people do use it to make up for the time when it's sitting there not being used.
The only thing is it is a school club activity, which is why we approved it. It's not kind of like
Okay.
one of those trips where we would write the letter that says it's not a school sponsored.
What did we do for when the trip went up to, the bus went up to Canada, or the upper boundary waters 2 years ago? We let the bus go all the way up there. I don't think we charged them anything to go all the way up towards the Canadian border.
Well, as long as we're being consistent.
Uh,
I mean, so you're clarified that then, other trips we said the
So we
student's
have
going to
a-
cover the full cost of the whole trip.
So the administrative procedures that we put in place with our attorney a couple years ago when we were on the policy was there's school-sponsored field trips. That's kind of like for a class, so that if a kid was on free and reduced lunch,
We cover it.
we're saying it's required for the class or it's part of the class. Then there was athletic or activity field trip request, which are not sanctioned events by the IHSA or the conference, but basketball team wants to go on over spring break and play in a tournament in Arizona, or baseball, something like that. They would put that into the principal. It'd be optional for the kids on the team. You couldn't require it, but it'd have to be at the cost of the team to fundraise. It wouldn't be school sponsored monetarily, but it would be approved by the principal because they'd be wearing our uniforms representing. And that's kind of, this is the fishing club.
That's what we did with the band that's going down.
Correct. Like when they went to
So,
Florida and some of that.
Which does this fit in the fishing club? Is it as if?
It's an activity field trip.
Okay.
So it's an optional field trip that the school is endorsing,
So,
but not required.
so does that,
So we really wouldn't charge rental fees. The only fees that would be charged is that the kids have to cover their cost of room and board and any kind of fees related to the trip.
well, my point is the cost of the bus is related to the trip and another, like if they had to rent a bus They'd have to pay the
They'd
whole
have to pay the
cost.
cost. That is correct.
So I'm saying, are we consistent by, one group say you have to rent the bus and you have to pay for it, another group, we provide the bus and they don't have to pay for it?
I do not recall having dealt with this my first 4 years
In
here.
other words, requiring somebody to rent one, we've allowed them to
I
use
think
it.
when we bring up the
So we've
the
been
whole
consistent.
paper, we should probably look
Yeah,
at
I mean,
that and let's raise it.
I want them to go. It's not,
Yeah.
like Mike said, the bus is gonna either sit there or be here. I just wanna make sure we found the policy and we're consistent.
Sure.
And it didn't seem that way with what they're requesting.
It sounds
When
like
I was comparing it to the band trip to Tampa, they gotta cover all their costs.
That is correct.
If we're providing the bus here, they're not really covering all their costs. The school district is subsidizing it by providing them a free vehicle.
Correct.
Okay.
We could figure that out if the board wanted me to look into that going forward.
we've allowed other groups to do it that way.
We've been a little inconsistent with this
Correct.
factor, right? So
Because it's a school trip.
I go along with Gary's thing. We should address it and make sure we're consistent in the future.
I think we need a resolution.
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the fishing club's overnight fly fishing trip to the Tyler Creek Campground in Alto, Michigan for the dates of June 11 through 14, 2015, with a cost to each student of approximately $75 as presented in the January 13, 2015 Board Agenda Packet.
Second.
Second by Mike. Mary Ann?
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Gritchen?
Yes.
Mr. Jepson?
Yes.